This is a Vivekananda Kendra Kanyakumari recording. All recordings of Vivekananda Kendra are in the public domain. For more information and also to volunteer, please visit www.vkendra.org. My India, the India Eternal by Swami Vivekananda. Read by Noina Chatterjee. Chapter 4. Education, the Panacea.
Knowledge, inherent in man. What we say a man knows should, in strict psychological language, be what he discovers or unveils. What a man learns is really what he discovers by taking the cover off his own soul, which is a mine of infinite knowledge. We say Newton discovered gravitation. Was it sitting anywhere in a corner waiting for him? It was his own mind. The time came and he found it out. All knowledge that the world has ever received comes from the mind. The infinite library of the universe is in your own mind. The external world is simply the suggestion, the occasion, which sets you to study your own mind, but the object of your study is always your own mind. The falling of an apple gave the suggestion to Newton, and he studied his own mind. He rearranged all the previous links of thought in his mind and discovered a new link among them, which we call the law of gravitation. It was not in the apple, nor in anything in the center of the earth. All knowledge, therefore secular or spiritual, is in the human mind. In many cases, it is not discovered, but remains covered. And when the covering is being slowly taken off, we say, we are learning. And the advance of knowledge is made by the advance of this process of uncovering. The man from whom this veil is being lifted is the more knowing man. The man upon whom it lies thick is ignorant, and the man from whom it has entirely gone is all-knowing, omniscient. There have been omniscient men, and I believe there will be yet, and that there will be myriads of them in the cycles to come. The essence of education. Education is the manifestation of the perfection already in man. Therefore, the only duty of the teacher is to remove all obstructions from the way. The true education, however, is not yet conceived of amongst us. I never define anything. Still, it may be described as a development of faculty, not an accumulation of words, or as a training of individuals to will rightly and efficiently. The huge steamer, the mighty railway engine, they are non-intelligent. They move, turn, and run, but they are without intelligence. And yonder tiny worm which moved away from the railway line to save its life, why is it intelligent? There is no manifestation of will in the machine. The machine never wishes to transgress law. The worm wants to oppose law, rises against law whether it succeeds or not, therefore it is intelligent. Greater is the happiness, higher is the jiva, in proportion as this will is more successfully manifest. The will of God is perfectly fruitful, therefore He is the highest. What is education? Is it book learning? No. Is it diverse knowledge? Not even that. The training by which the current and expression of will are brought under control and become fruitful is called education. Now consider, is that education as a result of which the will, being continuously choked by force through generations, is well nigh killed out? Is that education under whose sway even the old ideas, let alone the new ones, are disappearing one by one? Is that education which is slowly making man a machine? It is more blessed, in my opinion, even to go wrong impelled by one's free will and intelligence than to be good as an automation. Education is not filling the mind with lot of facts. Perfecting the instrument and getting complete mastery of my own mind is the ideal of education. To me, the very essence of education is concentration of mind, not the collecting of facts. If I had to do my education over again and had any voice in the matter, I would not study facts at all. I would develop the power of concentration and detachment. And then with a perfect instrument, I could collect facts at will. Side by side in the child should be developed the power of concentration and detachment. Education is not the amount of information that is put into your brain and runs riot there, undigested, all your life. We must have life-building, man-making, character-making assimilation of ideas. If you have assimilated 5 ideas and made them your life and character, you have more education than any man who has got by heart a whole library. If education is identical with information, the libraries are the greatest sages in the world, and encyclopedias are the rishis. We want that education by which character is formed, strength of mind is increased, the intellect is expanded, and by which one can stand on one's own feet. The education which does not help the common mass of people to equip themselves for the struggle for life, which does not bring out strength of character, a spirit of philanthropy, and the courage of a lion, is it worth the name? Real education is that which enables one to stand on one's own legs. Another thing that we want is the abolition of that system which aims at educating your boys in the same manner as that of the man who battered his ass, being advised that it could thereby be turned into a horse. No one can teach anybody. The teacher spoils everything by thinking that he is teaching. Thus Vedanta says that within man is all knowledge. Even in a boy it is so. And it requires only an awakening, and that much work is the work of a teacher. We have to do only so much for the boys that they may learn to apply their own intellect to the proper use of their hands, legs, ears, eyes, etc. And finally, everything will become easy. Hands off, as I always say, and everything will be right. That is, our duty is to clear the way. Do not try to disturb the faith of any man. If you can give him something better, if you can, get hold of a man where he stands and give him a push upwards, do so. But do not destroy what he has. The only true teacher is he who can convert himself, as it were, into 1,000 person at a moment's notice. The only true teacher is he who can immediately come down to the level of the student and transfer his soul to the student's soul and see through the student's eyes and hear through his ears and understand through his mind. Such a teacher can really teach, and none else. All these negative, breaking down, destructive teachers that are in the world can never do any good. A close personal contact between the teacher and the taught. My idea of education is personal contact with the teacher. Guru Graha Vasa. Without the personal life of a teacher, there would be no education. Take your universities. What have they done during the 50 years of their existence? They have not produced one original man. They are merely an examining body. The idea of the sacrifice for the common weal is not yet developed in our nation. One should live from his very boyhood with one whose character is like a blazing fire and should have before him a living example of the highest teaching. Mere reading that it is a sin to tell a lie will be of no use. Every boy should be trained to practice absolute brahmacharya, and then only faith, shraddha, will come. Otherwise, why will not one who has no shraddha speak an untruth? In our country, the imparting of knowledge has always been through men of renunciation. India had all good prospects so long ago as Tyagis, men of renunciation, used to impart knowledge. Education and religion. I look upon religion as the innermost core of education. The root is religion. Religion is as the rice, and everything else like the curries. Taking only curries causes indigestion, and so is the case with taking rice alone. After preaching spiritual knowledge, along with it will come that secular knowledge and every other knowledge that you want. But if you attempt to get the secular knowledge without religion, I tell you plainly, vain is your attempt in India. It will never have a hold on the people. Swamiji's plan about religion-centered education. we must have a temple. For with Hindus, religion must come first. Then, you may say, all sects will quarrel about it, but we will make it a non-sectarian temple, having only Om as the symbol, the greatest symbol of any sect. If there is any sect here which believes that Om ought not to be the symbol, it has no right to call itself Hindu. All will have the right to interpret Hinduism, each one according to his own sect ideas, but we must have a common temple. You can have your own images and symbols in other places, but do not quarrel here with those who differ from you. Here should be taught the common grounds of our different sects, and at the same time the different sects should have perfect liberty to come and teach their doctrines, with only one restriction, that is, not to quarrel with the other sects. Say what you have to say, the world wants it, but the world has no time to hear what you think about other people. You can keep that to yourselves. Secondly, in connection with this temple, there should be an institution to train teachers who must go about preaching religion and giving secular education to our people. They must carry both. As we have been already carrying religion from door to door, let us along with it carry secular education also. That can be easily done. Then the work will extend through these bands of teachers and preachers, and gradually we shall have similar temples in other places, until we have covered the whole of India. That is my plan. Not negative, positive education. We must give the public only positive ideas. Negative thoughts weaken men. Do you not find that where parents are constantly taxing their sons to read and write, telling them they will never learn anything, and calling them fools and so forth, the latter do actually turn out to be so in many cases? If you speak kind words to boys and encourage them, they are bound to improve in time. If you can give them positive ideas, people will grow up to be men and learn to stand on their own legs. In language and literature, in poetry and the arts, in everything we must point out not the mistakes that people are making in their thoughts and actions, but the way in which they will gradually be able to do these things better. Pointing out mistakes wounds a man's feelings. We have seen how Sri Ramakrishna would encourage even those whom he considered as worthless and change the very course of their lives thereby. His very method of teaching was a unique phenomenon. In New York, I used to observe the Irish colonists come, downtrodden, haggard-looking, destitute of all possessions at home, penniless and wooden-headed, with their only belongings, a stick and a bundle of rags hanging at the end of it, fright in their steps, alarm in their eyes. A different spectacle in 6 months. The man walks upright. His attire is changed. In his eyes and steps, there is no more sign of fright. What is the cause? Our Vedanta says that an Irishman was kept surrounded by contempt in his own country. The whole of nature was telling him with one voice, "Pat, you have no more hope. You were born a slave and will remain so." Having been thus told from his birth, Pat believed in it and hypnotized himself that he was very low, and the Brahman in him shrank away. While no sooner had he landed in America that the shout went up on all sides, "Pat, you are a man as we are. It is man who has done all. A man like you and me can do everything. Have courage." Pat raised his head and saw that it was so. The Brahman within woke up. Nature herself spoke, as it were, "Arise, awake," etc. Likewise, the education that our boys receive is very negative. The schoolboy learns nothing, but has everything of his own broken down. Want of Shraddha is the result. The Shraddha which is the keynote of the Vedas and the Vedantas, the Shraddha which emboldened Nachiketa to face Yama and question him, through which Shraddha this world moves, the annihilation of that Shraddha. Therefore, are we so near destruction? The remedy now is the spread of education. First of all, self-knowledge. I do not mean thereby matted hair, staff, komandalu, and mountain caves which the word suggests. What do I mean then? Dualist, qualified monist, Shaiva, Vaishnava, Sakta, even the Buddhist and the Jain and others, whatever sects have arisen in India, are all at one in this respect, that infinite power is latent in the Jivatma, individualized soul. There is the same Atma in all, the difference being only in manifestation. That power manifests as soon as it gets the opportunity and the right place and time. From the highest god to the meanest grass, the same power is present in all, whether manifested or not. We shall have a call forth that power by going from door to door. Secondly, along with this, education has to be imparted. The old institution of living with the Guru and similar systems of imparting education are needed. What we want are Western science coupled with Vedanta, Brahmacharya as the guiding motto, and also Shraddha and faith in one's own self. What we need is to study, independent of foreign control, different branches of the knowledge that is our own, and with it the English language and Western science. We need technical education and all else that may develop industries so that men, instead of seeking for service, may earn enough to provide for themselves and save something against a rainy day. Not that education which inculcates weakness. I have no objection to dualism in many of its forms. I like most of them. But I have objection to every form of teaching which inculcates weakness. This is the one question I put to every man, woman or child when they are in physical, mental or spiritual training. Are you strong? Do you feel strength? For I know it is truth alone that gives strength. I know the truth alone gives life, and nothing but going towards reality will make us strong. And none will reach truth until he is strong. Every system, therefore, which weakens the mind, makes one superstitious, makes one mob, makes one desire all sorts of wild impossibilities, mysteries and superstitions, I do not like, because its effect is dangerous. Such systems never bring any good. Such things create morbidity in the mind, make it weak, so weak that in course of time it will be almost impossible to receive truth or live up to it. Self-reliance, our goal. All the wealth of the world cannot help one little Indian village if the people are not taught to help themselves. Our work should be mainly educational, both moral and intellectual. Educate the people so that they may learn to be self-reliant, frugal, and not given to marrying, and thus save themselves from future famine. Flaws in the present system. It, that is the present university system, is almost wholly one of defects. Why, it is nothing but a perfect machine for turning out clerks. I would even thank my stars if that were all. But no. See how men are becoming destitute of Shraddha and faith. They assert that the Gita is only an interpolation and that the Vedas are but rustic songs. They like to master every detail concerning things and nations outside of India. But if you ask them, they do not know even the names of their own forefathers up to the 7th generation, not to speak of the 14th. A nation that has no history of its own has nothing in this world. Do you believe that one who has such faith and pride as to feel, I come of noble descent, can ever turn out to be bad? How could that be? That faith in himself would curb his actions and feelings, so much so that he would rather die than commit wrong. So a national history keeps a nation well restrained and does not allow it to sink so low. Looking from one standpoint, you should rather be grateful to the Viceroy for his proposal of reforming the university system, which means practically abolishing higher education. The country will at least feel some relief by having breathing time. Goodness gracious, what a fuss and fury about graduating. And after a few days, all cools down. And after all that, what is it they learn about that what religion and customs we have are all bad, and what the Westerners have are all good. At last, they cannot keep the wolf from the door. What does it matter if this higher education remains or goes? It would be better if the people got a little technical education so that they might find work and earn their bread, instead of dawdling about and crying for service. The education that you are getting now has some good points, but it has a tremendous disadvantage, which is so great that the good things are all weighed down. In the first place, it is not a man-making education. It is merely and entirely a negative education. A negative education or any training that is based on negation is worse than death. The child is taken to school, and the first thing he learns is that his father is a fool. The second thing that his grandfather is a lunatic. The third thing that all his teachers are hypocrites. The fourth that all the sacred books are lies. By the time he's 16, he is a mass of negation, lifeless and boneless. And the result is that 50 years of such education has not produced one original man in the 3 presidencies. Every man of originality that has been produced has been educated elsewhere and not in this country. Or they have gone to the old universities once more to cleanse themselves of superstitions. Education can eradicate destitution of the masses. Education, education, education alone. Traveling through many cities of Europe and observing in them the comforts and education of even the poor people, there was brought to my mind the state of our own poor people, and I used to shed tears. What made the difference? Education was the answer I got. Through education comes faith in one's own self, and through faith in one's own self, the inherent Brahman is waking up in them, while the Brahman in us is gradually becoming dormant. How can there be any progress of the country without the spread of education, the dawning of knowledge? But know for certain that absolutely nothing can be done to improve the state of things, unless there is spread of education first among the women and the masses. History and the Puranas, housekeeping and the arts, the duties of home life and principles that make for the development of an ideal character have to be taught with the help of modern science, and the women students must be trained up in the ethical and spiritual life. It is only in the homes of educated and pious mothers that great men are born. Mass education. Educate and raise the masses, and thus alone a nation is possible. The whole defect is here. The real nation who live in cottages have forgotten their manhood, their individuality. Trodden under the foot of the Hindu, Mussulman or Christian, they have come to think that they are born to be trodden under the foot of everybody who has money enough in his pocket. They are to be given back their lost individuality. They are to be educated. Our duty is to put the chemicals together. The crystallization will come through God's laws. Let us put ideas into their heads, and they will do the rest. Now this means educating the masses. Here are these difficulties. A pauper government cannot, will not, do anything, so no help from that quarter. Even supposing we are in a position to open schools in each village free, still the poor boys would rather go to the plough to earn their living than come to your school. Neither have we the money, nor can we make them come to education. The problem seems hopeless. I have found a way out. It is this. If the mountain does not come to Muhammad, Muhammad must go to the mountain. If the poor cannot come to education, education must reach them at the plough, in the factory, everywhere. How? You have seen my brethren. Now I can get hundreds of such all over India, unselfish, good and educated. Let these men go from village to village, bringing not only religion to the door of everyone, but also education. So I have a nucleus of organizing the widows also as instructors to our women. Now suppose the villagers after their day's work have come to their village and sitting under a tree or somewhere are smoking and talking the time away. Suppose 2 of these educated sannyasins get hold of them there and with a camera throw astronomical or other pictures scenes from different nations, histories, etc. Thus, with globes, maps, etc., and all this orally, how much can be done that way? It is not that the eye is the only door of knowledge. The ear can also do the same. So they would have ideas and morality and hope for better. Here our work ends. Let them do the rest. There are thousands of single-minded, self-sacrificing sannyasins in our own country, going from village to village, teaching religion. If some of them can be organized as teachers of secular things also, they will go from place to place, from door to door, not only preaching but teaching also. Suppose 2 of these men go to a village in the evening with a camera, a globe, some maps, etc. They can teach a great deal of astronomy and geography to the ignorant. By telling stories about different nations, they can give the poor 100 times more information through the ear than they can get in a lifetime through books. If there is inequality in nature, still there must be equal chance for all. Or if greater for some and for some less, the weaker should be given more chance than the strong. In other words, a Brahmin is not so much in need of education as a Chandala. If the son of a Brahmin needs 1 teacher, that of a Chandala needs 10, for greater help must be given to him whom nature has not endowed with an acute intellect from birth. Female education. Religion, arts, science, housekeeping, cooking, sewing, hygiene. The simple essential points in these subjects ought to be taught to our women. But only teaching rites of worship won't do. Their education must be an eye-opener in all matters. Ideal characters must always be presented before the view of the girls to imbibe them with a devotion to lofty principles of selflessness. The noble examples of Sita, Savitri, Damayanti, Lilavati, Kana and Meera should be brought home to their minds, and they should be inspired to mold their own lives in the light of these. But the truth is that some defect or other must creep into that learning or culture which is not founded on a religious basis. But now female education is to be spread with religion at its center. All other training should be secondary to religion. Religious training, the formation of character and observance of the vow of celibacy, these should be attended to. In the female education, which is obtained up till now in India, it is religion that has been made a secondary concern. Education through colloquial languages. In our country, owing to all learning being in Sanskrit from the ancient times, there has arisen an immeasurable gulf between the learned and the common folk. All the great personages, from Buddha down to Chaitanya and Ramakrishna, who came for the well-being of the world, taught the common people in the language of the people themselves. Of course, scholarship is an excellent thing. But cannot scholarship be displayed through any other medium than a language that is stiff and unintelligible, that is unnatural and merely artificial? Is there no room for art in the spoken language? What is the use of creating an unnatural language to the exclusion of the natural one? Do you not think out your scholastic researches in the language which you are accustomed to speak at home? Why then do you introduce such a queer and unwieldy thing when you proceed to put them in black and white? The language in which you think out philosophy and science in your mind and argue with others in public, is not that the language for writing philosophy and science? If it is not, how then do you reason out those truths within yourself and in company of others in that very language, the language in which we naturally express ourselves, in which we communicate our anger, grief, or love, etc.? There cannot be a fitter language than that. We must stick to that idea, the manner of expression, that diction and all. No artificial language can ever have that force and that brevity and expressiveness, or admit of being given any turn you please as that spoken language. Language must be made like pure steel. Turn and twist it any way you like, it is again the same. It cleaves a rock in twain at one stroke, without its edge being turned. Our language is becoming artificial by imitating the slow and pompous movement and only that of Sanskrit. And language is the chief means and index of a nation's progress. Language is the vehicle of ideas. It is the ideas that are of prime importance. Language comes after. Language or art or music that expresses no meaning and is lifeless is of no good. Now they will understand that the more strength is infused into the national life, the more will language, art and music, etc. become spontaneously instinct with ideas and life. The volume of meaning that a couple of words of everyday use will convey, you may search in vain in 2000 set epithets. The greatness of a teacher consists in the simplicity of his language. My ideal of language is my master's language, most colloquial and yet most expressive.
End of Chapter 4. My India, the India Eternal by Swami Vivekananda. This is a Vivekananda Kendra Kanyakumari recording. All recordings of Vivekananda Kendra are in the public domain. For more information and also to volunteer, please visit www.vkendra.org.